Okay. Yeah, so this meeting is to talk about the 12.4 issues for the APM team. We are just we have about 20 issues. We're just gonna kind of walk through them quickly because we don't have a lot of time. So just kind of briefly walk through each one, just give a little high level introduction to each issue. If there's questions or details, we can kind of follow up afterwards if they're detailed questions, but if there's quick questions, we'll try to answer them right here. I'm going to be uploading this to YouTube, so there's a couple security related issues I'm going to just skip over for now. And then I think that's about it. The only other thing is I'll share my screen here in a second. I also labeled everything. We added new labels for their like category metrics, category logging, or tracing. So there's one of those three labels, I think, on all of the issues for 12.4 now. So just another way for product and engineering to kind of coordinate issues and see what we're working on.
Hey, Matt, do we want to take out the security issues from the description even? Because some of these titles could also, if we're uploading this to GitLab Unfiltered, some of these titles are descriptive also of the vulnerability.
Yeah, so I'll try not to show those at all. I'll share my screen with just the issues, but I won't show the two security.
Oh, okay, the list, awesome.
Instead of there's also a planning issue, which we should probably take it out of there too, but
that's good.
Okay. Yeah, I'll show you. I have tabs open with everything here, so if I can find the right browser. I think it's this one. All right. There we go. All right. Can everyone see that?
Right.
So these are in priority order. Product went through and kind of prioritized them, and these are the ones that are left. So we'll start with this first one. Say kind of an engineering spike around installing Elasticsearch as a managed application. This will facilitate logging in the future.
So I did a little research on this. You want me to give it the
sure, if you have a 30-second overview.
Sure. I think that all that's required here is going to be to come up with a chart with a set of values YML for the standard GitLab or Elasticsearch chart. For this thing to be very useful, it needs to have a persistent value claim, so that there's some way to store persistent values for the logging in the because normally we don't have any persistent value claims in any of the other charts that we have, so they're just kind of ephemeral. But the logging doesn't need to be as ephemeral, maybe as like Prometheus and stuff is. So I did a little bit of work on some of the Helm charts. I made a MR to the Helm charts, but needed to be changed. But Thong, I think it was, gave me some really good feedback on that. So I think that this can certainly be okay, here's what we think needs to be the values for this and how it goes into the to the repo, and then get configure involved to make sure that everything's copacetic for.
Sounds good. And I think in 12.5 or beyond, there's more to build on top of this then once we kind of lay this groundwork.
I'll certainly want to bend Dove's ear around just wonderful things about Elasticsearch.
All right, sounds good. All right, moving on. The next one is another one around logging. This is to kind of dig into how we can, this kind of builds on that last one, but how we can build, kind of start aggregating logs. So I think there's a lot of comments and history in here that we're not going to go through right now, but I think there's enough to start working on this. We might have to, once somebody picks it up, Adrian said he was going to take a look at it. So be able to kind of dig in and see if there's any more detail we need to gather, but that's what this one is, to start pulling all those logs together. The next one is around tracing. So for a first pass, we've been talking about just exposing kind of Jaeger tracing in an iframe within the GitLab product, but there's some security concerns there, so we want to try to address that. So that's what this one is. There's a number of kind of some details about some of the security concerns about pulling an iframe in and what it exposes. So that's what this one is meant to solve. That's a tracing one. Pretty much the rest, I think, are around metrics. So the next one is auto detection per namespace. So we want to, I think there's already a setting that we support metrics with namespace deployments, but we don't auto detect we can create metrics, but we don't kind of detect them automatically, I think is the problem for auto DevOps.
There's an MR that came out, I think during the last release, that changed the way the namespace that we use for auto DevOps, so that the namespace is related to the name and ID of the project being deployed, the name, ID, and environment of the project deployed.
Okay.
So we may just have to use that same strategy.
So, perfect. Okay, that makes sense. Okay, the next one is another Prometheus, but a storage class. So some deployments use, or there's different types of persistent volume. So there's either, we currently think that it's going to be a certain storage class in the cloud provider, but there's settings in Prometheus that you can change to your storage class, and especially as you're growing, I think that often will change. So we need to support that so we can also pull those metrics in.
It's very similar to the Elasticsearch one above too.
Okay. So this is another logging one around the pod logs. So be able to choose which environment in the, is it the operations tab? Yeah. So be able to choose that and add that drop down. Is that straightforward enough? Okay. The next one is a bug that we found around, I think it's a difference between like a line chart and an area chart, that they don't match what we'd expect. Dashboard. Okay. So is this for, I don't know, if Adrian.
Yeah, this is a front end bug.
Yeah.
It's essentially just that when we embed a metrics dashboard URL, it's not registering the line chart. It always shows it as an area chart.
Gotcha. Okay. All right. Breezing through these. So this is another bug. So this is actually, so a customer reported this. It's basically there's a list of kind of concerns, bugs around metrics and how they are working. I think it was about a month ago, Adrian went through and found a number of related issues that address some of these. I think we'll need to update the description a little bit to talk about which ones have related issues and which ones will be addressed in this issue. But I think, so each of these bullet points is basically a different bug, and I think 3 or 4 of them already have issues created. So we'll link to those. And I think there's maybe 1 or 2 that maybe we can address with this issue. But they're all in that kind of same general theme that metrics aren't quite working the way we'd expect. So this would be a great one if we can kind of address some of those in this release. And in the comments here, there's listing of, there's some of the issues that are linked here, and there's some more details on some of them. So. Okay, next one. This is a big one around source controlled alerting for auto DevOps. So basically being able to add a custom alert manager config file. So if it exists, then we could use that. I think there's one more issue that is related to this, which we'll get to. I think I'll jump ahead. It's this one. That was lucky. Click. So there's these two. I know, Ruben, I think you looked into it a little bit. I think they're related. I don't know if they're exactly the same or not.
The description sounds the same,
Okay.
but maybe Kenny meant one issue to be for alert manager config and the other issue to be for Prometheus rules.
Right. Okay. I think you put that comment in there too. So
Yeah.
But the general goal here is that we can start keeping some of these configuration files in source control, which would be great. So this is one where we want to load. I'm not fully up to speed on this one, but can you open this one? Be able to load kind of test data into environments. So he had an idea that we could have like a Prometheus data file that gets loaded. I don't know if anyone else has looked into this at all.
I have an idea for this that about the anyway, I have an idea for this. We could take it offline, but essentially,
Okay.
I'd like to make a little Rails app that is a fake that does some fake Prometheus metrics, so that you just hand it the metrics of your endpoint, have it read in all of the different metrics that and give you the ability to say over time make this increase or make this decrease or make this thing go whatever.
Okay.
I think it would be fairly useful for the world, but it'd certainly be useful. I know Jose and I talked about this a while back about being able to fabricable some data so you can test your alerting or test your graphs in Grafana from Prometheus. So,
Right. Okay.
but maybe we'll have a little offline just discussion about that.
Yeah, we might need to, for this one, I know, yeah, you had some good comments in here and back and forth with Kenny and stuff. So we might need to think about, for this one, what's kind of an MVC that we can deliver in this release and kind of break it down a little bit. So this one might need a little bit more definition.
It certainly needs a little front end, and because if I were to do the front end, it would look like it, came out of, East Germany.
All right.
Functional, but not pretty.
Nice. All right, the next one, this was a bug. I think it was, it's a year old. I think it's still valid though, where we're not collecting the data that we'd expect. Kind of came back up recently. Trying to remember the details. I know it could just be, as Dove kind of pointed out, it could just be a kind of a documentation update type of issue. Adriel, I think you looked at this a little bit. Not sure if you have any more, if you remember anything about it. There's some kind of comments back and forth, but they were kind of old. But then a few weeks ago, there was some more activity again. So.
Yeah, I don't. I obviously commented on this. I don't remember. Oh yeah, this looks like there were two things kind of getting conflated here, if I remember correctly. It's about, people were running into errors on the dashboard probably as a result of invalid queries. But it's not clear to the user when that happens why there's no data showing up. So really we just need to clarify here what's happening on a dashboard when we see no data.
Oh, yeah.
Which is a two-part thing. I mean, that's going to involve front end and back end here. Back end to determine why we get errors and pass that information to the front end, and then we can show more specific data and, basically alert the user to, hey, this is an invalid query, or we couldn't connect to your Prometheus instance, or whatever it is, that gives us just a better understanding of how to troubleshoot our dashboard.
Yeah. Okay. Great. Thanks. Okay. So this one is basically just moving where the Prometheus integration is in the settings. So I think it is just as simple as kind of moving where you can find this, which I think is mostly just a front end thing, but if I'm wrong on that, we can change that. So right now it's, you go to settings and integrations and Prometheus, and we want to move it to just like settings operations, I think is the goal.
We may discover this is backend too, but
okay.
Yeah.
So this is more improvements around the time window filtering. So I think we did this, was it last or 2 milestones ago? But there's we did kind of the first iteration already, if I'm right, and then this is a kind of a follow-up to that. So there's some designs here for just improving how we can do the time filtering for your metrics dashboard. Okay, about 5 left here. So this is one we talked about already. This is another kind of source controlled alerting one, which might be a duplicate, but we'll try to flush that out. So this one I think came about from some of the dog fooding stuff that we've been doing for the metrics. Basically, we lazy initialize metrics right now so the first time metrics start coming in, then we'll provide data. But that was causing some issues where if they can't find a metric they're expecting to find, you get some errors. Basically, we want to initialize all these for this specific class to just initialize them to 0. So then, and there's a whole list in this comment, in this ticket or this issue about which ones to actually do. But then that way, when the server starts, we won't get these kind of errors about kind of missing metrics or missing or alerts or missing data that would power the alert. Okay. So this is a kind of a documentation one, we think, but how to proxy Prometheus behind Nginx. I mean, it's just, I think that's about all there is to that one. The next one is another documentation one, but just a little bit about how to set up Prometheus. This one's kind of old, so we should probably look through it to see how things have changed in the last 2 years since this is open. I know we've added documentation since then, but it'd probably be a good time to look at it again. And Axel, I think, is planning to kind of dig into it a little bit, this milestone for us, which is great. And then the last one, I think we just added in the last day or something, but basically this goes along with another bug that we were seeing in 12.3, but basically just validating, you can see the little animation here, validating that you've configured this correctly before, because right now, if you watch it again, if you don't select an operator like greater than or less than or equal, if you don't select one of these, then you just get a error messages that says error creating alert. You don't know why. So if we can do some front end validation on that, that will make that error go away. I think there's another bug that we're working on that could be something slightly different, but this came out as part of that too. So at least this will fix part of that. Okay, that's all of them. Like I said, there are 2 security-related ones that we can talk about outside of this call, but does anyone have thoughts or comments or questions about any of these? Go back to some.
There are a couple of them. Oh, go ahead.
David, go ahead.
So there are a couple of them that require, that we're saying we want to have source controlled alerting or source control this, that, or the other thing. And maybe that's a question for configuration, or maybe it's our question, but we need to come up with kind of okay, this is where we're going to store. This is where we're going to store all these configuration files and how we're going to store them in the repository where we're controlling this stuff. So I think that's a guide that we need to come up with before we start down the path of too many of these.
Yeah. Yeah. So there's the source controlled learning one. There was one about the sample data, where we want to store that somewhere. So it'd be under, I assume it'd be under the that GitLab directory, but then after that, I'm not sure. So I think you're right. It'd be good to talk to, maybe it's the configure team, but maybe we can try to figure out a standard place. If there's, we could maybe look at all of the places that we have now and see what works for that. Miguel, did you have something?
Yeah, we have a couple of feature flags that we were planning on removing, and I saw those issues getting moved quite far ahead in the timeline. So I'm a bit concerned that we don't prioritize those.
Okay. Yeah, because those were mostly done, weren't they? I can't remember the...
Yeah, they were done, but I'm still waiting on the back end a couple of those, because otherwise, if we remove them, we're going to break a couple of features from the configure team.
Right. That's right. Okay. Okay, so maybe we should flag those to Do. It's a holiday for him today. That's why he's not here. Otherwise, normally he would be at this meeting. But let's find those and we can kind of flag them to see if we can either pull those into a closer release. Before this milestone, before he went through, there were, I think, over 50 issues, and now we're down to about 20. So he had to do a lot of shuffling things around, which was great. So if there's things that we want to reprioritize, I think we just need to kind of let him know kind of why they're needed a little bit more. He basically just had to rely on a lot of the description and his best understanding at a high level to prioritize things. So, but yeah, so I think let's just find those two issues, because there's two, I think, right? So let's find those and we'll flag those and let him know kind of the status of them and why we want to get those in.
Sure.
Okay. I think that's it. I'll kind of stop recording now, I guess. And yeah, I think that's about it, if I can figure out how to stop recording. Yeah, all right, thanks everyone.